Boehner, let the House work its will. If Speaker Boehner prevents the Senate bill from coming to the floor before midnight, the responsibility for this government shutdown is clearly a Republican government shutdown and will rest squarely on his shoulders, as all America knows.
Madam President.
Senator from Illinois.
Let me thank the Majority Leader for the statement that he's just made. It's hard to believe we're a little over 3 hours away from shutting down the government of the United States of America. Shutting down the government of the United States of America. When you hear about this happening in foreign countries, you think, you know, it's a shame they just aren't as stable and strong as our great democracy. And yet, here we are, facing that possibility just a few hours from now. And it's through our own fault. It's the failure of leadership. I'll tell you what we've done in the Senate. I think it's the right thing. We've passed a clean CR, a clean budget bill. No political strings attached, none. Oh, we could have attached the immigration bill, the farm bill, a lot of possibilities there. None. A clean budget bill for America's government for the next 6 weeks. And we sent it over to the House and said, just vote for this, and we don't have to shut down the government. And they've said no, repeatedly. And they're about to send us the third effort of the House, and it too will be defeated. Because they are obsessed with Obamacare, obsessed with the Health Care Reform Act. More than obsessed, they're living in mortal fear of what's going to happen starting tomorrow. As you see across America, they're going to announce the insurance exchanges in every state. People who have never had insurance in their health insurance in their entire lives will have a chance to buy it. Some of it will be affordable for a lot of families. Some of it will be the first chance a family's had to buy health insurance. We had an article I read over the weekend, one of the Chicago papers. It's families raising a child with mental illness. As a consequence, they've been disqualified every time they've tried to buy health insurance. Nobody will insure them because their child suffers from mental illness. Guess what? As of tomorrow, they'll get a list of health insurance plans in their state they can buy. And it's in competition, in a marketplace. And they can choose from many different options. In my state of Illinois, 54 different options that we can choose from for our health insurance. It means for that family that has lived without health insurance because of the mental illness of their son, for the first time in their lives, they'll be able to buy health insurance. Madam President, if you've ever lived as a parent with a sick child without health insurance, you'll never forget it as long as you live. I know of what I speak. I was there, and I remember it, and I'll never forget it. When you finally get health insurance, you can breathe again, knowing that if something happens, you're going to get some help in paying those medical bills. For some of these families, for a lifetime, they've never had this chance. That's why the Republicans want to stop Obamacare. They don't want these exchanges to be announced. They don't want people to see these options. They know what's going to happen. 40 million uninsured Americans are going to take to this because it gives them the first lifeline they've ever seen when it comes to health insurance. That's what it's all about, and that's why they fear it and hate it so much. It's going to work. It's going to give peace of mind to families, and we're never going back. Oh, we'll change some of the provisions in this health care reform. Of course we will. Anything this big is going to be changed as it should be. Wisdom, experience. It's going to give us some ideas of how to make it better and stronger and work fairer. That's why the Republicans are so determined to stop it tonight. Tonight, before it can go into its first phase of advertising marketplaces tomorrow. They're going to fail again. For the third time, they're going to fail in just a few days with this House approach of strings attached. And there's one other element here. I'm glad the Majority Leader raised it. People think that members of Congress have these gilded health insurance plans, and the honest answer is we do have a pretty darn good health insurance plan. We go through what's known as a Federal Employees Health Benefit Program. 8 million federal employees and their families, including members of Congress and their staff, buy into it. It's been around for decades. It works well. My wife and I can choose from 9 different health insurance plans in Illinois as federal employees. Well, we choose the big plan, the big Blue Cross plan, and we pay the highest premium for it. But our employer pays a share of the premium. This is not a radical idea. 150 million Americans have exactly the same arrangement. They get their health insurance through their work, and their employer pays a portion of the health insurance premium. Now comes the House Republicans, and they've come up with a new idea. First, the requirement that members of Congress and their staff buy insurance through the marketplace. It's okay with me. I've taken a look at the marketplace plans. They'll cover my family just fine, thank you. Now they add the kicker, but the federal government cannot pay for any of the premiums. Why? Because we know under the health insurance marketplace, small businesses with fewer than 50 employees can provide an employer contribution to their employee buying through that marketplace. It's in the law. So members of Congress aren't being treated any differently when our employer, the federal government, pays part of our premium in the marketplace. That's all that the law says. They want to stop that. It isn't because of the injustice, because others are getting the same benefit, we're not getting special treatment. It's because they want to find a way to create some pain in the process. Senator Reid talked about 16,000 congressional workers and their family members. I'm sure that number included their family members. And they want to single them out and say that they get no employer's contribution for their health insurance. Shame on them for coming up with this idea. To deny hardworking people, whether they're members of Congress or our staff, the basic protection of health insurance without digging deeper in their pockets? Is that their idea of making this a fairer, more just society? I don't think so. We're going to reject what the House is about to send over, and the clock's ticking. It'll be a few hours left before midnight. There's an answer to this, though. Easy one. Right now, Speaker Boehner has in his power the ability to call a bill on the floor that will avoid the government shutdown. It's a bill passed in the Senate, a bill with no political strings attached, a simple extension of the government's budget for 6 weeks. 6 weeks. He can do it. He can stop what otherwise will happen tomorrow morning. When agencies all across our nation give notice to their federal employees, go home, we're shut down. And it means hundreds of thousands of federal employees tomorrow will be sent home and not paid for their day's work. And the things they do to make this a stronger country and to keep our government working will just come to a stop. The greatest nation on earth shutting down its government on October the 1st, 2013. Totally unnecessary. It is a manufactured political crisis by Tea Party Republicans, and we're hoping that some of our friends on the Republican side of the aisle, conservatives, moderate conservatives from all over the nation, will join us. Let's spare this. Let's spare this embarrassment for America. Let's let those federal workers go to work tomorrow, as they should. Provide our country the services it needs. Let's get ready for health care reform and the marketplace, and let's let the American people be the judge as to whether it's the right thing or not. I think it will be. But trying to stop it in its tracks is just a fool's errand, as one of the members of Congress on the Republican side described it. If the Speaker would call the spending bill that passed the Senate for a vote tonight in the House of Representatives, we can be spared this government shutdown. Madam President, I yield the floor.
The clerk will call the roll.
Hold my request.
Just talking to my friend from Arizona.
Majority Leader.
Yeah, talking to Nevada is not a heavily populated state like Illinois. But we have a number of really beautiful systems that are part of our national park treasures. We have one, Lake Mead, which we all know about. Lake Mead, we have about 15,000 people visit that every day. That'll close in the morning, or 12:01 tonight. You add that up, that's about 550,000, 600,000 people a year come there. Red Rock, a beautiful place, just not far out of Las Vegas. Tourists love it, just like they love Lake Mead. We have 1 million people a year come there. This is going to happen all over America. And I mentioned just a couple things in Nevada. I'll bet my friend knows that there are of the national treasures in Illinois that will close. Is that true?
I would say to the senator from Nevada that we have 50,000 federal employees in Illinois, and we expect the majority of them to be sent home tomorrow. They're working at places like the Rock Island Arsenal. Some of those employees will have to go home tomorrow morning. These are men and women who make the armaments America needs to be safe. Same thing will happen at Scott Air Force Base and at the Great Lakes Naval Training Station. That's the reality. I might also add to the senator, I was briefed this afternoon because of my responsibilities on the Appropriations Committee about the impact of the government shutdown on the intelligence agencies of the United States. I'm not at liberty to give a number, but it is an amazingly large percentage of those working at intelligence agencies tomorrow who will be told to go home. These men and women are watching out for our safety and security, to guard against terrorism every single day. Because the government shuts down, they will be sent home. Not all of them. The military personnel involved will continue, but the non-military personnel, many of them, thousands of them, will be sent home from work tomorrow. For what purpose? To make a political point about the power of Congress to shut down the government? It really doesn't make us any safer as a nation. It certainly doesn't enhance our reputation, and it's not helping to build our economy. As the senator from Nevada knows, we're making a recovery. It's slow, and we've been told by the Business Roundtable, not necessarily an ally of the Democratic Party, that this Tea Party Republican strategy will be disastrous in terms of economic growth. I don't know if the word was calamitous or catastrophic or whatever, but cataclysmic, whatever, it was one of those. And they told us to do this will be damaging to this economy. And yet, the House Republican leadership is hell-bent on getting this done, shutting down this government tonight, when all they have to do is to take what has passed the Senate, our budget proposal that has passed the Senate, and to call it for a vote. If they call it for a vote, it will pass, and they know it. And Speaker Boehner and the Tea Party Republicans live in fear of that possibility. I hope that they come to their senses. This is about more than a political bragging point, more than tomorrow's headline. We can avoid shutting down this government. Mr. President, I yield the floor and suggest the absence.
The clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Alexander.
President,
The Majority Leader.
I ask unanimous consent, morning business be closed.
Senate is in a quorum call.
So sorry. I ask unanimous consent the quorum be dispensed with.
Without objection, the quorum call be suspended.
I now ask consent that morning business be closed.
Is there objection? Without objection, morning business is closed.
Mr. President, I ask the chair lay before the Senate a message from the House with respect to H.J. Res. 59.
The chair lays before the Senate a message from the House.
Resolved that the House recede from its amendments to the amendment of the Senate to the resolution, H.J. Res. 59, entitled Joint Resolution Making Continuing Appropriations for Fiscal Year 2014 and for other purposes, and concur with a House amendment to Senate amendment.
I move to table the House amendment and ask for the yeas and nays on my motion.
Is there a sufficient second? There is a sufficient second. Clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Alexander, Ms. Ayotte, Ms. Baldwin, Mr. Barrasso, Mr. Baucus, Mr. Beckich, Mr. Bennett, Mr. Blumenthal, Mr. Blunt, Mr. Bozeman, Mrs. Boxer, Mr. Brown, Mr. Burr, Ms. Cantwell, Mr. Cardin, Mr. Carper, Mr. Casey, Mr. Chambliss, Mr. Chiesa, Mr. Coates, Mr. Coburn, Mr. Cochran, Ms. Collins, Mr. Coons, Mr. Corker, Mr. Cornyn, Mr. Crapo, Mr. Cruz, Mr. Donnelly, Mr. Durbin, Mr. Enzi, Mrs. Feinstein, Mrs. Fisher,
Lee, do you want to look at it again? Just to double
Mr.
check?
Flake, Mr. Franken, Mrs. Gillibrand, Mr. Graham, Mr. Grassley, Mrs. Hagan, Mr. Harkin, Mr. Hatch, Mr. Heinrich, Ms. Heitkamp, Mr. Heller, Ms. Hirono, Mr. Hoven, Mr. Inhofe,
Further. He does not.
Mr. Isaacson,
Maybe something further in. Oh,
Mr. Johans, Mr. Johnson of Wisconsin, Mr. Johnson of South Dakota, Mr. Kane, Mr. King, thank you,
oh, there you go.
Mr. Kirk,
Yeah. All right. Yes.
Ms. Klobuchar,
Yes.
Ms. Landrieu, Mr. Leahy, Mr. Lee, Mr. Levin, Mr. Manchin,
Yeah, I looked here. She's looking it up.
Mr. Markey,
No, no,
Mr. McCain,
it's
Mrs. McCaskill, Mr. McConnell,
it does not say that on this message.
Mr. Menendez. Mr. Merkley, Ms. Mikulski, Ms. Mikulski,
I do not know that. You should ask Trish.
Mr. Moran,
I hope you're right.
Ms. Murkowski, Mr. Murphy, Mrs. Murray, Mr. Nelson, Mr. Paul, Mr. Portman, Mr. Pryor, Mr. Reed of Rhode Island, Mr. Reed of Nevada, Mr. Risch, Mr. Roberts, Mr. Rockefeller, Mr. Rubio, Mr. Sanders, Mr. Schatz, Mr. Schumer, Mr. Scott, Mr. Sessions, Mrs. Shaheen, Mr. Shelby, Ms. Stabenow, Mr. Tester, Mr. Thune, Mr. Toomey, Mr. Udall of Colorado, Mr. Udall of New Mexico, Mr. Vitter, Mr. Warner, Ms. Warren, Mr. Whitehouse, Mr. Wyden. Senators voting in the affirmative: Boxer, Cantwell, Cardin, Durbin, Feinstein, Franken, Heinrich, Kane, Markey, Merkley, Mikulski, Murray, Reed of Nevada, Tester, Warren, and Whitehouse.
No, it's not. I stole it.
Mr. Schatz, aye. Mr. Wyden, aye. Mr. King, aye. Mr. Corker, no. Mr. Roberts, no. Senators voting in the negative: Chiesa, Collins, Corker, Crapo, Cruz, Fisher, Blake, Johans, Lee, Roberts, Sessions, and Vitter. Mr. Reed of Rhode Island, aye. Mr. Brasso. Mr. Brasso, no. Mr. Hatch. Mr. Hatch, no. Mr. Isaacson. Mr. Isaacson, no. Mr. Paul, no. Mr. Scott, no. Mr. Nelson, aye. Mr. Coburn. Mr. Coburn, no. Mr. Johnson, Wisconsin, no. Mr. Johnson, South Dakota, aye. Ms. Heitkamp, aye.
Senator, please.
Mr. Alexander, no.
We order in the chamber the senator from Tennessee. Oh, he was.
Mr. Chambliss, no. Ms. Ayotte. Ms. Ayotte, no. Mr. Graham, no. Mr. Hoven, no. Mr. Donnelly, aye. Mr. Grassley, no. Mr. Pryor. Mr. Pryor, aye. Mr. Brown. Mr. Brown, aye. Mr. Rubio, no. Ms. Klobuchar, aye. Mr. Bennett, aye. Mr. Warner, aye. Ms. Murkowski. Ms. Murkowski, no. Mr. McConnell. Mr. McConnell, no. Ms. Baldwin, aye. Mr. Kirk, no. Mr. Heller, no. Mr. Levin, aye. Yes, sir. Mr. Toomey, no. Mr. Casey, aye. Mr. Burr, no. Mr. Baucus. Mr. Baucus, aye. Mr. Leahy, aye. Ms. Cochran? Mr. Cochran, no. Mr. Cornyn, no. Mrs. McCaskill, aye. Mr. Schumer, aye. Mr. Udall of Colorado, aye. Mr. Coates, no. Mr. Wicker, no. Mrs. Gillibrand? Mrs. Gillibrand, aye. Ms. Stabenow? Ms. Stabenow, aye. Mr. Inhofe? Mr. Inhofe, no. Mrs. Hagan, aye. Mr. Carper? Mr. Carper, aye. Mr. Menendez, aye. Mr. Udall of New Mexico, aye. Mr. Enzi, no. Mr. Moran? Mr. Moran, no. Mr. Shelby, no. Mr. Beckidge, aye. Mr. Sanders, aye. Ms. Hirono? Ms. Hirono, aye. Mr. Blumenthal, aye. Mr. Manchin, aye. Mr. Coons, aye. Mr. Risch, no. Mr. Bozeman, no. Mr. Thune, no. Mr. McCain, no. Mr. Murphy, aye. Mr. Portman, no. Ms. Landrieu? Aye. Mr. Harkin? Mr. Harkin? Aye. Mrs. Shaheen? Aye. Mr. Blunt? No.
Mr. Rockefeller? Aye.
Senators wishing to change their vote? If not, on the motion to table the House amendment to the Senate amendment to H.J. Res. 59, ayes 54, nays 46. The motion to table is approved. Is agreed to. The Majority Leader.
As unanimous consent to be approved in morning business for debate only until 11 p.m. The Senator permitted to speak up to 10 minutes.
Senate will come to order.
We'll do it over again. Mr. President.
Majority Leader.
Unanimous consent to be approved in morning business till 11 p.m. tonight. Senators during that period of time be allowed to speak for up to 10 minutes each, and at 11 o'clock I be recognized.
Without objection, so ordered.
Note the absence of quorum.
Clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Alexander?
President, Mr. President.
Just say for debate
The
only.
Majority Leader.
Ask consent the quorum call be...
Without objection, the quorum call be suspended.
President, there's some dispute here. I thought I said that there would be 10 minutes for debate only, and that would be, and 11 o'clock we'd be recognized. I just want to make sure the debate only is part of the record because there's some dispute as to whether I said...
Is there objection? Seeing none, so ordered.
Note the absence of quorum.
The clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Alexander? Please say aye.
The Senate just voting to table or kill another House-passed measure to fund the government through December 15th. That version included some changes from the last one. The amendment would have delayed the mandate that individuals buy health insurance for a year, and also included language to eliminate health insurance subsidies for members of Congress and their staffs. So the Senate is sending a clean CR back to the House, meaning it only includes government funding, no language about the health care law. This is the second time today that the Senate sent a clean CR back to the House. Chad Pergram of Fox News sent a tweet that says senior House GOP aide says to expect a response from the House later tonight after the Senate vote. It would have to go back to the Rules Committee and the floor. That from a tweet from Chad Pergram. Current government funding ends at midnight tonight. For the second time today, the Senate is sending a clean CR to fund the federal government past midnight tonight and through December 15th back to the House, including government funding only, nothing about the health care law. With a partial government shutdown possible in just over 2 hours, Senators Reid and Durbin on the floor earlier saying that the national parks will be closed if Congress does not improve temporary government funding. The Associated Press writes that a shutdown would send hundreds of thousands of workers home and inconvenience millions of people who rely on federal services. Amanda Turkle of the Huffington Post tweets, "Cleanup will stop at 505 Superfund sites if the government shuts down tomorrow." Some other parts of the government, from the military to air traffic controllers, would remain open. A number of senators are still on the floor after voting for a second time today to table or kill a House amendment to keep the federal government operating. A headline in the Washington Post, "Shutdown imminent after Senate rejects latest House proposal." The Senate rejected that House-approved amendment to the short-term spending bill by a vote of 54 to 46. The Washington Post saying the vote pushed the country closer to a midnight government shutdown. Niels Lesniewski, a reporter with Roll Call, tweeting, "The Senate's in morning business until 11 p.m. The next extension might take us to, morning." And Manu Raju of Politico also tweeting, "Senators have been told to return by 11 p.m." A partial government shutdown could happen in about 2 hours after the House and Senate have not approved a temporary funding bill to keep the government operating. The Senate voted tonight to send the latest funding bill back to the House without health care language. And I wanted to read this tweet from Chad Pergram of Fox News again. It says, senior House GOP aide says to expect a response from the House later tonight after the Senate vote. Would have to go back to the Rules Committee and the floor. The Associated Press writes that union officials say the Federal Aviation Administration is furloughing nearly 3,000 inspectors at the heart of the agency's safety operations because of Congress's federal budget impasse. Those inspectors check to make sure airlines are maintaining their plane safety and conduct inspections at airports of planes and pilots.